Hi, everyone. So we're going to get started. Again, this is Angela Francis, the orientation facilitator for the undergraduate and new student orientation. I want to greet all of you and say hello. We're going to get started. I'm going to show you some orientation tips and tricks. I'll give you a peek at what it's like on the faculty side in terms of grading some things. And then I will also answer any questions that you have. So let me get started here. This is actually, and for those of you who are in the undergraduate and new student orientation site, you'll notice that this is a different site. Some of you actually may be in this site. So don't be concerned if this does not look familiar. So you've all already hopefully learned about the announcements page, but just to highlight it, you can see in this example that we've got important announcements that are being posted during the course of what is in this case an orientation, but this will be the same case during courses. You can see in this case that the oldest ones at the bottom, that will generally be the case for you and your courses. However, every now and then an instructor or a professor will move something key to the top. So you should always give things a skim just to make sure you're not missing anything. Let's just jump right to it. I'm going to show you a couple of different things, and we're going to start with submitting announcements, and we'll return to this at the end again. So in all cases, whenever you see an assignment, the way you're going to access the assignment is actually by clicking on the name of the assignment. In this course, those names are blue. That's not going to necessarily be the case in your in your courses. However, in this case, that is how they are indicated. So when you click the name of an assignment, you'll see a lot of different information. First is how many points an assignment is worth. Now note that this may or may not be out of 100, in this case it is. You're going to want to look at your syllabus to know how many points or how much percentage each assignment is worth. You can also, when one is available, click this button here to look at the rubric. And rubrics are super important and super useful when they're there because they let you know exactly how you can access, or excuse me, exactly what you should do in order to fully fulfill the assignment requirements. So you can see here that this assignment is concerned with both content and formatting, and here is how those two aspects of an assignment will be evaluated. So you'll always see the instructions here. There may also be an attachment. But the big thing that you should remember is that whenever possible, you are going to want to attach a file. I'm going to show you why you want to do that by doing exactly what you don't want to do in this case. So sometimes what students will do is they will write just a text submission. Or they will write something in the comments. So in order from worst option to best, when you write something in the comments, you actually are supposed to be just giving some information by the, so just to briefly, I'm looking at the questions. Hold on one moment. All right, I'm sorry about that. So when you are submitting a comment, this is supposed to be just a note to the instructor. So for example, if you are concerned about some aspect of your submission, or you're submitting a draft and you have something in particular that you want the instructor to know about, you put that here. This is really just a note, something you would tell a professor after class when handing your work in. Text submissions are an option for small assignments. However, they do not allow your instructor to download your work or to make comments in the margins of your work. All of you, when you are submitting assignments during orientation, are going to have the opportunity to see what those comments can look like. But we as instructors don't have the option to do any of that when you use text submission. So you are always going to want to attach a file, and you can browse from your computer just like you normally would in order to do that. So I'm just going to choose a file here. I'm going to choose a syllabus and I'll attach it just so you can see what that looks like. And you can see that you have the option to remove it if you find that you've attached the wrong file. I could also, if I wanted to do so, attach an additional file. Remember, once you're done, that you click submit. There's a question here about why people can't speak. It's because it's a webinar. That's always the case here. And it says that you can understand us more clearly. You should still be able to hear me, however. If you are unable to hear me, well, I suppose you won't get this warning, but if I do cut out on you, you should let me know. Moving on to other types of submissions, and I'll return to this at the end. Going to show you a couple of other types of assignments, and I'm actually going to move to wikis. Wikis are just like Wikipedia, and the idea there is that you can collaborate with the other people who can access the wiki to create kind of a knowledge bank. So you can post a page on the wiki, someone else can edit it, just like you would on Wikipedia. And you can see here that the button to create a wiki page is up here. The instructions are here, and there will always be a home page that has some information usually posted by the instructor. Even though you have the ability to edit this content, you don't want to. So I would say the home page is the one thing that you're going to want to leave alone. You can add a comment, however. When you want to create a new wiki page, just click Create New Wiki Page, and you can add a name. And I'm going to take this moment just to show you what all of these buttons here can do. So these buttons, it's a WYSIWYG editor, and that stands for what you see is what you get. And the idea is that the way that things look here when you are formatting your work should be the way it looks when you post it. So you have your pretty normal things here: bold, italics, underline, strike through. So obviously I could do any of those things, right? And it'll be bolded. You also have the ability to create lists. So in this case, if I wanted to make all of this a list, I could choose between a bold. One thing I really want to highlight to you is the button on the bottom, or excuse me, on all the way on the end of the first row. And this is the Remove Formatting button. So this is what you would do if you either have made a mistake and want to remove all of the formatting, so you can see the bold and the lists are both gone, or if you're pasting your work from Word. And the other thing that you can do here is to create a link. You want to highlight the text that you'll turn into the link and click this button here. Looks like a chain. This is where you will add your list, your link itself. So for example, a link to Gmail. And one thing that you'll always want to do is have it open in a new window. So there you go. You now will have a link when you submit this. If you want to change the link in any way, so say I actually want to send this somewhere else, you can just click that link button again and go ahead and change it. And if you want to remove the link altogether, just click inside of it and click what looks like a breaking chain. So here you go. Now the link is gone. And you can press, if I'm on a Mac right now, so Command Z to undo just like you would otherwise. So now I've undone the last thing I did. One other thing that may be useful to you is to create images or to post images. So say I want puppies. I could use some puppies today. So let's find a picture of a puppy. This first one looks pretty cute. So we will go look at this puppy. And we now have the URL for an image. You can also grab something from your computer. But in order to create a link, a image, what you'll do is you will look on the last row and click Insert Edit Image. Because this is coming from the internet, I'm just pasting the URL, but you could also browse from your computer. And I'll give it a description of puppy. And this is important. Under the Appearance tab, you want to keep an eye on how big your image is. So I tend not to let things be larger than 350 pixels. But once you're done with that, you say Insert. There's my puppy. So I now have a puppy in here. In terms of when you will use wikis, wikis will be used only in some courses. However, these tools that I've just shown you in this WYSIWYG editor are not just limited to wikis. They are also available in blogs and on the discussion board and in journals. So whenever you're using any of those areas of the site, you will be able to do all of these things. But the wikis themselves are only assigned in some courses, and you'll know in the beginning of the semester, most likely if you are in one of those courses. So let me post my page. You can see my pages here. There's the puppy. You can see again, it looks just like it did when I was using the WYSIWYG editor. I could click this link, and here I am in Google, and it did indeed open in a new tab, and so I'm done. If I wanted to edit my page or someone else's, I would just click Edit Wiki Content. I could make any edits to it that I want to. And the thing about wikis is that you can see who created it, who had last modified it, but your instructor can also see who did what or who made what changes all the way through. So say all of you then came and edited my wiki page and changed my puppy to a kitten or whatever changes you wanted to make. The instructor could see each of those versions and therefore will know exactly what each member of the wiki has done. And so that's one of the areas that you might find this assigned, is when there's group work. So this video will be, or this will be recorded, so you'll be able to review all of this whenever you'd like, including adding these pictures in if you want to add some pictures into your own work. So you will indeed have the opportunity to do so. So let me show you another common task here, and that's on the discussion board. You've all used a discussion board at some point before, and I'm going to head into here. So I'm now in a forum. So I'm going to create a thread, and you'll notice again I have the same WYSIWYG editor. And just very quickly, because I do believe I have the picture still posted. Let's see if I do. I do. So there's the picture. So again, it's just the image, add or edit image. You provide the image URL or browse your computer for it. Give a description. So in this case, puppy. Look at appearance. And I suggest neither dimension be larger than 350. And when you click in search, you can see here's your puppy. Now, another thing, just so you all know, you can see that right now my puppy is actually taller than my WYSIWYG editor. If you hover over the lower right corner, you can click and drag, and now it's bigger. All right, so I can post this here. And I added this text because I want to show you a couple of neat tricks once you are inside of a discussion board. You may at some point find yourself in a very busy forum. And at that point, you may have a hard time finding what you said. And so if that's the case, one really useful thing is the search tool. And I want to make sure that you see how to use that. So there's the search button up here. And when you click it, it gives you the opportunity to search in the current forum, which in this case is time management and learning online reflection, in the current discussion board. So say I was in a group with a discussion board and I just wanted to look through the group, I could do that. Or in all forums. Here it says all forums in the organization, but in your course, it will say all forums in the course. So let's say I just want to look in the current forum and I want to look either, I can do for something mentioning my name, so Angela, or I can do something mentioning a word that appears in the post, so webinar. And when I click go, it will show me any posts that mention that word. So in this case, because I'm the only one mentioning a webinar, here you go, you can see this post is here. If I put my name in, what it will do is it will show me anything that either I have posted or anything that mentions my name. So if you're in a conversation with someone, but you don't remember who, and they've addressed you, you might be able to find it this way. So this is something that is in all of your courses. You can always use it. And it is one way that you can say, go back and look for posts that your instructor made on a particular topic when you're studying for the final or what have you. The other thing I want to show you is how to subscribe to things. So you have two options, and well, you may have two options. You may be able to subscribe to a forum. So for example, the entire Q&A forum, and you would do that by entering it and clicking the subscribe button. And what that means is that whenever someone makes a post in this forum, I, now that I am subscribed, will get an email letting me know that's happened. And if you want to unsubscribe, you can just click unsubscribe and there you go. The other option is that you may have a forum where you cannot subscribe to the forum. So here you notice it doesn't say subscribe here. That's because I can't subscribe to this forum, but I can subscribe to individual threads. So I could subscribe to my thread, and I can do that in a couple of ways. The first is I can go into it, and when you hover over your post, the subscribe option appears on the top. So if I click this, I am now subscribed to my thread, and you can do that to anyone's. The other option is to highlight it, go to thread actions, and here's the subscribe/unsubscribe button. So if I'm subscribed to this forum, which you can see, or this thread rather, which you can see because of this little icon here, clicking this button will unsubscribe me. And so you see now I am no longer subscribed. So those are two things that you're going to want to do in the various forums you find yourself in. I always suggest if it's available to you, that you subscribe to threads that you post, because that will send you an email letting you know that one of your peers or your professor has responded. And it's always a good idea to respond to any responses that you get. One, because that helps create the knowledge in the class, but also if what you're really concerned about is your grade, often that kind of thing is looked favorably upon. And if you end up developing your knowledge in the course of a discussion, a professor will often keep that in mind. Lastly, I do want to show you a couple more things here. You'll notice that I have the opportunity to edit this post because I made it. That is not always going to be an option. You cannot always edit posts and you cannot always delete posts. So you want to be careful when you are making your posts. Just make sure that your post something that you want to be seen. And the reply button here obviously will allow me to make a response. And just so you can see what that looks like, if you haven't already, you'll notice that what it does, if you have an original post, the original post will be gray, a response will be white, and once you have a conversation going, what it starts to do is it starts to indent them. So you can notice that here. So I do want to highlight that to you, and if this ever gets long and you want to hide some threads, you can just, or posts rather, you can collapse them. So that is something that I wanted to make sure you were all clear on. We have a couple of questions about the Spark or the misconduct module, and this webinar unfortunately isn't going to cover too much of that. What you're going to want to do is email Christopher Leiden. He can be, he's the one who can answer all of your questions about Spark, including how to access it. So just because that's been mentioned a couple of times, that is your contact person for those questions. All right, so I've now shown you two different types of assignments. I'm going to show you just two more, and then I'll show you about my grades, and we'll be all set, unless you guys have more questions. So the first is I want to show you about blogs. So blogs, I would say, are a bit more popular than wikis, but they look fairly similar. There is already a post in this blog, and this is a class blog, which means everyone's posts go to the same place. So here I am. I'm going to make a post here, and hopefully, actually, you'll give your work more descriptive titles than I am in this case, but just for example's sake. And you'll notice in all of these places that I've been, I have the opportunity to attach files. My suggestion, generally speaking, is that when you are making a discussion board post, that you type it or that you provide it within the window. I would say that save the files for when you're doing something that is where formatting is important, but when in doubt, you should always ask your individual instructors. So I'm going to post this entry. And you can see now, because my post was before the one that was already there, it is on top, but that you can see both of them. Commenting works a little bit differently here. And it's actually just the way that it would in a wiki. So I can put my comment here. Notice that it is not a WYSIWYG editor, so I cannot add any formatting there. And what it does is it just shows you that there's a comment. And then I do want to show you just briefly some information about quizzes. So quizzes and exams, when you enter them, it will give you some information. So in this case, you're being told that this test can be saved and resumed later, which means there's no forced completion. I can leave the window. and that I can try this multiple times. So this test actually allows unlimited attempts. All of the exams in orientation do, because they're just for you to test your knowledge. Usually that's not going to be the case. So you may see something like there are 2 attempts. Forced completion, if it's on, means that you need to stay in this window and you need to complete the exam in one sitting. So if you see forced completion turned on, keep that in mind. Do not press begin until you are ready to work and sit for the entire time for that exam. You may also have an amount of time. So if there's a timer, it will tell you how much time you have to finish the exam, and you want to keep that in mind too. Some quizzes will actually submit the work for you when the timer runs out, others won't. So either way, you want to keep careful eye on time, and the timer would be visible at the top of the screen if that is something that's part of an exam. But in this case, let's just begin. So I want to highlight here the difference between 2 types of exams, or 2 types of exam questions. These, when you see the circular buttons, those, you're just picking one or the other. So in this case, I'll give you the answer. The answer is false. If you're writing in a Blackboard journal instead of a Blackboard blog, other students can't see what you're writing, just like a real journal. And then this question number 3, you can see that the options are squares. And that's because you can actually select more than one. This is called a multiple answer question. And so in these cases, I could click however many of these that I want to, but you only want to select the ones that are correct. Sometimes these will give you partial credit. Sometimes they'll take points off if you highlight any of the answers that are wrong. But you always want to look at these and think about which ones, possibly more than one, are the correct answer. In this case, there is actually just one answer. And the correct answer here is that when you're creating a link, you want a descriptive link that opens in a new window. So this is what we were looking at before. You can see the link tells you what it is. It's a link to our academic calendar. And when I click it, it would open in a new window. So you can also see that everything that I've worked on here, eventually Blackboard does save. But if you are really nervous, if you've just written a long answer, for example, a essay question or a short response, you can click Save Answer. And if you've written an answer, it will save it for you. My suggestion, all of that being said, is that if you have a long essay question and forced completion is not turned on in your quiz, it may be a good idea to start writing it down in Word, or at the very least copy it once you're done so that you have a copy in case something goes wrong with your internet when you submit. So I haven't answered all of these questions, but I'm going to click Save and Submit anyway. It will give you a warning, so you can see it's telling me I haven't answered everything here. I'm going to disregard it. And once you're done, you will see this page here. You can click OK, and the results that you see here will depend on the settings for the quiz. So in this case, this quiz lets you see what you said. So in this case, I didn't answer this question. It lets you see what the possible answers are, and it gives you some feedback. But what it's not doing is it's not telling me what the right answer is. When I get one right, you can see it does so there. And when instructors have done so, there is response feedback telling you, congratulations, you got this question correct. So other things that you may be able to see here, possibly right away, possibly after the due date, is you may be able to see what the correct answer was. And that'll be more common when you either have reached the due date or when you can only take an exam one time. It's important to note that questions like true or false, multiple choice, multiple answer, all of those Blackboard will tell you how you did right away. But things like essay questions or response questions where you're typing something in, often your instructor will have to review that to give you a score. So there's a question about if the answers have the squares like this one did. Is it always more than one answer? Well, in this case, it was actually only one. So even though I could have selected multiple options, only one was right. But what it does tell you is that there may be more than one. So if you are taking an exam and you're doing a multiple answer question and you are sure that the other ones are wrong, don't second guess yourself only because this is a multiple answer question. In terms of deadlines to finish the quiz, if a deadline has been provided, that will show up on that page. However, what you'll often see is the information will be available in terms of the weeks. So this course site is a bit different just because of how it's structured. Students can go through it all the time. But if you are in the orientation with the orange bar on the left instead of the blue one, you'll notice that the weeks actually have dates on them. So for example, the 6th through the 13th. So if a quiz is linked to in that week, often it will be due at the end of that week, but course sites will make that clear, either through a deadline that's attached to the assignment or just in the text of the site itself. All right, so I am going to give you a bit of a preview, if it'll let me, of things from the instructor point of view, but I am going to get off over there off screen so that I am not revealing student work. So that means you get to look at puppies just for a moment. Okay, so I'm going to show you two different things just so you can see what your instructor sees. If this will move, I'll do so. We'll do it one at a time. So here is the instructor view of a discussion board. So I am looking at everything I just did on the discussion board. And what you can see is that I'm seeing both my initial thread, right? This is the post I made, and any comments I made. And so I can see all of that on one page as an instructor. And what instructors will often do is they will take all of this into account. Because you can see here, we've got a rubric, and I'll show you what this looks like from your point of view. But remember, I looked briefly at the rubric before, and I said you want to keep that in mind because that's how faculty members are considering your work. Here you can see that that's true. So your instructor can say, you know, in this case, I posted a puppy instead of what I was supposed to, so I didn't do these things. And I'll be really generous and give myself an acceptable there. So you can see it actually creates a grade that the instructor can modify if they'd want, and they can provide feedback. So the other one, I'll switch them out so you can see. So here is the example of that assignment that I submitted. So you can see what's here is if I had made a text submission, and you notice I, as the instructor now, have no way of commenting in the margins here. You can see down here, this is where comments would be. So imagine if you put your entire essay, a 3-page essay here in the comments. It not only would remove all of your line breaks and your formatting, but it would be very difficult to read. And so some professors will not accept any work submitted there. But you can see here that I can click right here and see, we'll see if it'll download. It may or may not want to do so quickly right now. But if this does download, what it will actually give me is access to all of the editing tools. We're going to leave this alone for a little bit just to see if it does so on its own sweet time, just because of my current connection. But while I'm waiting for that, I do want to show you something about Safe Assign. So Safe Assign will be something that's in some of your assignments, and when it's enabled, what it does, it provides your professor a way to create or view, rather, how much of your work that you submitted matches other sources, so other students' work, other things on the internet, and they can do so by viewing this originality report. So what this would do is, if I look at this attachment here, you can see that it shows where it thinks things are from. So I can actually go there and look at it. However, whenever your instructor does this, they will check. So here's an 18% here. I created this document. I can promise I didn't plagiarize. Your instructor actually will look at these things and see just what it thinks is being plagiarized. So for example, here, everything that's popping up is actually our boilerplate information about accommodations, disability services, and the rest. But you can see if I click it, it will tell me where it thinks it's coming from. I can actually go there and look at it. So the thing to take away from this is you want to be very, very, very careful when you are using sources. Make sure that if you are using a source that you're providing a quotation, that you do so properly. You also want to make sure that if you are paraphrasing, that you are paraphrasing fully. So that means putting it truly in your own words rather than piecemeal. If you are at all uncomfortable with paraphrasing, summarizing, providing quotations, there are writing fellows available to you, and you can click the writing and math help link up there to see more information about them, or look in the orientation resources section available in orientation. However, I do want to show you because, hurrah, it loaded. This is what we see in an attachment. So you can see that I am seeing exactly what the document looked like. In this case, it was a PDF. And as the instructor, I can draw on this. So if I was using a touch screen, that would be great. I could put a check mark on something if it was a great mark. But more importantly, I can also add some comments here. And post that. And so you as a student, when you use a document, an attachment, and the preferred ones here are generally going to be Microsoft Office files, so .doc, .docx. If you're using a course that uses Excel, then an Excel file, or as you can see here, a PDF. You do not want to use the sort of Apple suite, so pages files, numbers files, not those, unfortunately. But you can see here how useful this could be if if you're submitting a paper. Your professor can provide comments in the margins just like they would in a face-to-face course. So that's why we always suggest that you go the attachment route to give your professor the access to those tools. So the last thing I'll show you, I'm going to actually go back into student preview mode. And so now is a good time if you've got any more questions to pop them in, because we'll do our Q&A after this. But I want to show you my grades. So if I go to my grades, you can see a couple of things here. Automatically, there's upcoming. Over here, what you can see are a couple of things. So in the case of a quiz submitted, you can see how you did. You can also click here to go back to the assignment. Whenever you see this icon here, this yellow circle with the exclamation point, that means you submitted the work, but it hasn't been graded. So since I didn't submit my grades for that assignment, you can see that it doesn't look like it's been graded. You can see here Whenever you have a blue circle that looks like kind of like a pie or a timer, that means you started the assignment, but you didn't finish it. So you want to keep an eye out for that because that means you haven't quite done what you needed to. And whenever you see this speech bubble, you can click it and see your instructor's feedback. You can also click on the rubric, and if your instructor has used it, it will show you the information there. So in this case, you can see exactly how you scored on each of those areas. When you haven't completed an assignment, you can actually click View Rubric and it will show you the rubric as it exists. So you can always go to the My Grades area in advance just to look at all of the rubrics that are attached to the assignments in your course. So that is it for this little tour of Blackboard. You should feel comfortable if you have any questions after this webinar to ask them in the Q&A section of orientation, or you can actually email us at orientation at sps.cuny.edu. Yolanda and I, who staff that email address, we'll be glad to answer your questions there. So again, thank you all for joining us today. I appreciate the time, and we will provide a video of this as soon as it's available. Joseph, hi. And thank you again.